I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking at the outset to set this up, but did want to highlight a piece that some folks may have seen over the weekend in the Star Tribune entitled Showing Gains Made in Disabilities. And I believe we're going to share a link to that article in the chat for those that weren't able to see it. I highlight this because it previews a traveling exhibit that's very exciting from the Minnesota Governor's Council on Developmental Disabilities that'll display throughout the metro area this month, recognizing Disability Employment Awareness Month. But in addition to describing our state's history of institutionalizing individuals with disabilities, it paints an optimistic snapshot of our future. And it's that optimism that I really felt as we headed in to prepare for today's panel, and just what promises to be a robust discussion about how we meaningfully advance opportunities for people with disabilities in the employment space. And we have a great mix of panelists here from different backgrounds to share with you their experiences, both personally and professionally, in advancing inclusive workspaces in this incredibly competitive talent market. So as we introduce today's panelists, we're going to start with brief remarks from each of our panelists. And rather than read their full bios, we'll have them displayed on the screen. And we've asked each of our panelists to start by answering two questions. Number one, why are you so passionate about inclusivity? And then second, to describe their organizational connection to increasing employment opportunities for individuals with disabilities. So again, thank you all for being here, and we look forward to the discussion. I want to start our panelists' comments with Tia Schweiss. Tia is currently a benefits and well-being coordinator at 3M. I will turn it over to you, Tia. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. So as somebody that identifies with a non-apparent disability, I not only understand that there's challenges that come along with it, but also that there's many unique perspectives, abilities, and ingenuity, which is why I'm so passionate about disability and helping others rise above and beyond what they can do personally. Within 3M, I actually am part of the Diverse Abilities Network, and I am the community pillar lead. So I help bring in different volunteer opportunities for 3Mers across the globe to go out into the local community to volunteer with people with disabilities or organizations that support the disability community. Also within that pillar that I lead is advocacy groups such as the mental health advocacy group, and also other support groups such as parents with disabilities and stuff like that, that meet on different days throughout the week, just to kind of for 3Mers to have that safe place to go to share their stories, share best practices, and have that comfortable environment to know that we are creating that inclusive culture for 3Mers around the world. Outside of 3M, I am the vice chair for disability in Minnesota. And our mission is to promote best practices for people with disabilities throughout the state of Minnesota. And we also work with employers, which are our members, and we provide them disability training and different events throughout the years to get them more engaged with that disability community. Some of our main events that we do are the Dobie event, the mentorship program with local Minnesota colleges, and also a career fair that allows people with disabilities to connect with employers throughout the state of Minnesota and create those job opportunities and connections for them. So as I believe that we are really lifting others when we are promoting disability awareness, I think that working together, we can create that really equitable society for all individuals. And by raising awareness and embracing disability inclusion, we can promote diversity and innovation while ensuring that individuals with disabilities have equal access to education, employment, and any other opportunity that's out there. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Tia. And I think we look forward to following up just in the large organization that 3M is, kind of more of your insights about how to spread that idea throughout the culture of a company. So thank you for being here. Next, we'll turn to Lisa Morris Helmstetler. She is an assistant to the county commissioner at Olmsted County. Lisa, welcome. And if you could provide some introductory remarks. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I always have to try and think about how to succinctly explain my passion around promoting folks with disabilities. So when I was very little, my parents had some good friends who had a daughter who had Down syndrome, and Wendy was my favorite person in the world. And so she gave me kind of a foundation for experiencing disability. Fast forward many years, I started collecting stuffed animals, and my parents would joke that I had a special ed stuffed animal collection because I always chose the stuffed animals that I thought others maybe wouldn't buy because I felt they needed love. Maybe they had like their eyes were crooked or something wasn't exactly perfect. And so that was how I would choose my beloved animals, and we still have many of those to this day. Then I had my son, who is now 25, and he is diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder as well as developmental disabilities. So for the last 25 years, while I haven't had the disability myself or completely always understood what was happening, I have definitely lived that journey with him, and that I have so much passion around that. Then in general too, if anybody, which I think most of us have at some point in our life, have felt that we were the other, and I know I have had that at times, it definitely drives passion towards eliminating that othering and finding belonging for folks with disabilities, as well as any group that's traditionally been marginalized or underrepresented. My role at the county is interesting in that I do work closely with our elected officials and our administrator. And I also oversee the countywide diversity, equity, and inclusion work, which we call One Olmsted. I had also led that work when I was in family support and assistance as a supervisor or program manager for years, and that's where public assistance and child support live. So definitely have a lot of years of working with folks living in poverty, and I've seen how the othering can happen there and all the intersectionality that takes place. And so I get that opportunity every day through One Olmsted to work on how do we provide inclusion truly, and how do we start thinking about our hiring practices and how do we make them look different so they are inclusive for folks with disabilities. And I've really been pushing because what I saw happen was a lot of maybe folks getting hired with physical disabilities that were maybe they were seen, they were clear disabilities. And I've started that challenge around what about intellectual disabilities and what biases do we hold and how do we start talking about that and thinking differently about hiring folks who might have that those challenges.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm excited when we had an opportunity to prepare you sharing all the great work that you've been doing at Olmsted based in your personal experience is exciting. So thanks for being here and look forward to some additional conversation. Next, we will hear from Tom Pearson. Tom is the Managing Director at Market Response International. And Tom, I will turn it over to you to talk about your exciting work.
Okay, great. My introduction will be a little bit different. So our company has had the honor of and a privilege of being of service to the Minnesota Governor's Council on Developmental Disabilities for the past 24 years. And I would say my passion for people with developmental disabilities and inclusion has really grown from all the experiences I've been blessed to have and all the people that I've met in this whole journey. When we started in the year 2000, we started with developing a tracking study, an IPSI tracking study. And what IPSI is independence, productivity, self-determination, integration, and inclusion. And so we did a survey back then, and we repeated every 5 years to measure the extent to which people with disabilities, self-advocates and advocates, believe they are where they stand on these elements of IPSI. And what we found loud and clear right off the bat is the people with developmental disabilities who had some level of employment, part-time, full-time, or even a volunteer, they scored higher on all elements of IPSI than the people who did not have any employment opportunities. So it was very clear that the importance of employment for people with disabilities to enable them to, let's say, live a full life. So flash forward to this year, we completed a study among employers, and it was a two-phase study. The first one was qualitative. We did a dozen in-depth interviews with employers who were employing a person or persons with developmental disabilities. And these were employers who are working directly with a Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development, DEED, VRS, Vocational Rehabilitation Services. So from those interviews, we heard such positive, enthusiastic experiences that they were having with their employees with developmental disabilities that we were kind of skeptical. I mean, is it really that positive? So for the quantitative survey, we want to test and measure these attitudes, right? We decided, okay, let's not use a list from DEED. We'll get an unbiased sample from a commercial business sample provider and do our survey. And we did a survey. We had 200 respondents, companies, employers. About 60% or so currently employ someone with a development or with a disability. Most of them developmental disabilities, by the way. And by the way, they had to have at least 5 employees or more at the location where they worked in order to qualify. So it did not include very small companies. Anyhow, I would just say the positive energy and positive experiences rang true in the quantitative. For example, one of the questions was, how satisfied are you with your employees with disabilities compared to how satisfied are you with your other employees? And they're equally in satisfaction, but for different reasons. And I'd like to read a couple of quotes from employers that illustrate what those different reasons are, right? So here's one. One employer said, maybe they won't be as efficient, but an employee with developmental disabilities will bring a lot to your team culturally. They're motivated. They've motivated our other associates. Also, our guest experience has been elevated. They're so happy to be there working. It brings up the whole team. Happier associates provide better guest services, which means more repeat business. I'll read one more, then I'll shut up. The most amazing thing I saw was the complaining almost stopped from my current employees. It was unbelievable. They got to see how important it was to someone else. It changed the whole attitude, and people became very accepting, very forgiving, very understanding. It was amazing to see how my own people changed for the better when we started doing this. She uses the word amazing twice and the word unbelievable. Those are very emotionally charged words. So bottom line is what we heard and what we're seeing from the qual and the quant research is that the people with disabilities are bringing something new to the table, something that wasn't there before. There's a new benefit to the organizations that employ them. Now I'll shut up.
Thank you, Tom. I actually could listen to it all day. I was a science major in college, so that is incredibly exciting, and really appreciate your perspective and bringing that qualitative and quantitative together, because as we know, not everyone is in the same place when it comes to these conversations. And so while you can make qualitative arguments, sometimes you need that paired with the quantitative to really move hearts, minds, and behavior. So thank you so much for being here. Look forward to additional conversation. And finally, I will turn it over to our host today. Eric Black is the president and CEO of MDI. Eric.
Awesome. Well, once again, I'm host and participant. I've got already my half-page worth of notes from Lisa, Tia, and Tom. So, this is a phenomenal opportunity. I would say my passion maybe started a little bit differently in the fact that it started with what I would classify as a failure. When I was my nephew, who now has diagnosed with a developmental disability, when he was growing up, it was something we kind of just thought he would grow out of. So he's getting older. You're kind of seeing that he's not processing things the same as everyone else. But as he get older, he'll grow out of it, right? And then you start to go into blame mode. Bad school, teachers aren't, doing what they should do to make sure that the curriculum is effective for him. And then we went into we don't talk about it mode. So now it's going on, he's getting older, and it's something that the family really doesn't discuss openly because we frankly didn't know how to handle it or the types of services that might be available to make my nephew successful. And so it was about 7th grade when he really started lashing out. And this was things that were causing him to get suspended from school, isolated. And so I think he started to notice really he was different and didn't want to be in those environments because they were not productive for him. And he was getting called out on those. And, it's not that he couldn't handle himself because my nephew he was a big guy. So, but then that ultimately led to him dropping out of school. And so you have a case where we didn't know what we had, kind of figured out maybe something, didn't want to talk about it. And none of this led to a positive thing for my nephew in this situation. And so that's kind of the failure that kind of spun ahead when I made the life-changing decision that I was going to leave Cargill and want to do something, I think, more community impactive with my work where I lived. This opportunity with MDI came up, and I've seen it as a opportunity and a blessing, maybe a little bit of forgiveness for me to kind of focus in and help others have an opportunity that maybe I didn't do when my nephew was growing up. The really cool part about that is my niece, different parent, but so not in the same thing. She has a son, Caden, who he's on the spectrum of autism, has a developmental disability. And the joy I get when I talk to her, she's handled that situation tremendously different, right? And just hearing her like, well, yep, I had to have things in a certain order. He does really good. This is what he's really phenomenal with. And just hearing about how she has so much passion around him and how much he's a rock star, right? And so I think about how he has that home life that's really driving a vibrant life. And I think there's an attribute of that. I now know in the future, we're going to have an opportunity for him we're going to have an opportunity for him to have a work life and a play life, but how well that family life is really going to drive and open the doors. So we have much more different conversations today with her than I had 10, almost 15 years ago with my nephew. And so, because I really know what people on the spectrum can really deliver in the workforce. At MDI, that's all we do. So I agree with everything said before me, but I get it on steroids, right? So we have over, 400 employees, and about 60% of those are individuals with disabilities. So when you use words like happiness, engage, driving value, I get that all day, every day. And I mean, best job ever in life is working here at MDI because we've learned to bring the best out of people. And when you let people operate at their own ability, their ability soars to new levels. And being a manufacturer, it's one of those industries that we think productivity will suffer. And, we measure standards with people without disabilities. And that's how we price products for customers. So we don't make people pay for our mission, but we run above 100% of standard with a workforce that's highly vibrant, super cool, highly engaging. And so you can see some of the things Tom talked about being really realized in our organization. MBI, by being out here and being a manufacturer, but we've been in existence for almost 60 years, celebrate 60 years next year. And being a social enterprise, we really try to drive value through our products and services to our customer. And those individuals that work for us do that to a high degree. We have super high net promoter scores consistently with our customers. And so the value not only exists within MDI, but our customers see that value too. And so that really creates the differentiation between MDI And then as CEO, I get the opportunity probably, man, I want to say 7 days a week, but not, sometimes I don't hit it 7 days a week, where I get a chance to talk to one of my employees on the phone. Just give me a call. Hey, Eric, how's it going? Or, this is the week we get paid on. They'll give me a call like, hey, this is payday. Hey, like, yeah, man, we got paid. I'm happy. Like, we got paid today. Getting a check, is a big deal. Having work and some things that we take for granted is a big deal. And now, I didn't get calls like this at Cargill, but now I get these super cool calls, and I get to have these phenomenal relationships with people who are genuinely happy in life. They're not searching for happy. They're happy in life for what they have. So MDI is a phenomenal organization, and we have that. So much so, I'll just tag on a little bit, is that we created a philanthropic program called Unified Work, where we get out in the community now and do training and development for both employers and individuals with disabilities that may not have access to it. And so we've looked at our impact kind of go over tenfold. And so having the goal of by 2025 of impacting annually 2,500 individuals along this mission is our aspiration. We're well over 1,000 today since we started the program. And so just once again, double downing on the opportunity to bring more people with disabilities into our workforce and make better employers so we can have greater customer satisfaction. So yeah, once again, I appreciate everybody being here on the call today. This is really important to what we do in our state, and everybody here is able to help us activate that.
Thanks, Eric. Next time I'll ask you to share a little bit more about your passion. I'm just kidding. So I will just highlight, there's been some questions and resources shared in the chat. Again, we are going to ask the panelists a few questions as we start here, but please feel free to use that function to submit any questions you have. And we are actually going to go away from our script a little bit, because there was a question in the chat that I think is just important to ground us a little bit. And Lisa, I believe in your opening comments, you talked about this concept of othering. And there was a question in the chat just asking, can you say a little bit more about othering? And I think the individual is really asking for examples. So if you want to start, and if there's others who want to react to that as well, please feel free. But Lisa, we'll start with you.
Sure, this one doesn't necessarily have to do with disabilities, but it's a personal experience I had. So I grew up overseas. My entire childhood was spent in Germany. My parents were teachers on a military base. I didn't feel othered there, but when I moved to the US, my parents were still in Germany, and I moved to the US to start college in Minnesota. I found that if I expressed too much about what my childhood had been like, or about how I missed home, that there were a number of people who would then say things like, well, if it's so great, you should go back there. And so that led to me feeling othered, because it didn't feel necessarily safe to bring my entire experience to everyone. And so for a time, I stopped sharing that experience altogether, and even stated I was from a place in North Dakota that one of my parents is from, but that I had never lived in. So hopefully that helps.
Absolutely. Would anyone else like to share? I noticed some head nods. Tom or Tia, you were nodding.
To me, I think it's just kind of like that feeling, okay, if I share too much, they're going to disclude me, right? It's that sense of belonging. And sometimes when you share too much, maybe that sense of belonging goes away. That's kind of how I would determine othering.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll start with probably a little bit of a softball question, and Tia, I might ask you to weigh in here again. And this question really is for kind of those of you who are company leaders. But what advice would you have for company leaders that are seeking to broaden their workforce to include people with disabilities? Maybe kind of very specifically, right? There's kind of some high level probably advice, but even tactically, what advice you would have as from your experience?
To me, it's to cultivate that inclusive work environment. It's going to start with education. So some things that a company can do to help that create that education environment is to conduct inclusivity training for all of your staff to participate in, because it's going to impact everybody. It's not just going to impact one person or a supervisor or a manager or anything like that. Everybody should be included in that inclusivity training. Some things that we do at 3M is we're really committed to creating a workplace culture that is powered by inclusion. And we do this through a company or a program that we call REAL, which stands for Reflect, Empathize, Act, and Learn Allyship, to accelerate the journey of belonging of all of our 3Mers. So we practice real allyship, and we use it as a tool for allying effectively in any situation. When you're developing training and things like that for your employees to participate in, make sure you're including people that have disabilities or the needs for accommodation as part of your development team, because they're going to be able to provide those different points of views and help you develop those necessary tools to make it as accessible as it can be. Make sure you're also working closely with your, whether it's your employee resource groups, networks, or business resource groups, because they're already doing a lot of the work to advocate to make a difference within your company. One of the things that we did as the Disabilities Network within 3M is we created an accessibility center that's available to all 3Mers across the globe via the company intranet. Also, another important thing to do is to evaluate your job positions to help determine, are there flexible work options that we can offer with these jobs. Offering that flexibility helps increase your access to a really skilled workforce pool, and it also enhances the accessibility for employees of all abilities. At 3M, we have a model called Work Your Way, which puts our employees first and drives well-being in ways that enable our business and performance and goals. This model is more for our non-production employees, that they are able to customize where and when they work by balancing their own preferences with the needs of their team and their job requirements. Outside of your workplace, make sure you're partnering with nonprofits and other organizations to help empower people with disabilities, as you're going to be able to learn those best practices and create that more inclusive culture, not only for your company, but just the environment for your employees, even outside of the workplace. And as having a disability is one of the only groups in society that anyone can join at any time, a company should really look at disabilities as an asset and how they will come into play with building an inclusive work environment.
Thank you, Tia. Lisa, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, Tia captured that really well, so I'm not going to duplicate. I would add that we have shifted from or to an expectation that all leaders are leading by example every day. That does not mean you have to know everything, but it does mean that you're open to conversations and you're willing to step into that space and say, yeah, I don't know about that, but I think we should talk about it. Or to say, maybe I have this bias about folks with disabilities, and let's get a conversation going around that. In addition, we have started, well, for 4 years now, we've had annual surveys for all of our employees to see, like, are we moving in the right direction in terms of inclusivity? And then we also added what we called high fives to our performance reviews, and all of those measures have inclusion and like DEI ratings within them. And that's been a really important shift in our workforce, because people really see we are committed to this and we're being very intentional, and we're continuing to measure and to really pay attention, like Tia said, to education and to culture.
Yeah, thank you.
I can tell you what one of our respondents, actually more than one of the respondents, said, basically to answer the question, what should an employer do if they're interested in going down this path? He basically said what Tia said, that, you know, you reach out to the nonprofits or to DEED, VRS, to help you with that journey, because it's complicated and it's new. It's uncharted territory for a lot of employers. And I have a quote from one of the employers. He says, "I'm not a special ed teacher. I don't have the training. I partnered with vocational rehabilitation services. They have the understanding. They come into my business and learn what we need. It's scary, but partner with an expert and they'll help with the process.
Yeah, I think that opportunity with
Yeah.
public-private partnerships can be incredibly powerful. And I think, both what Tia shared and Tom, that quote, I think really exemplify that. I'm curious, Tom, from your perspective, are there any other kind of research data points that kind of show or that underline kind of the importance of that public-private partnership, where maybe there are more examples that when that partnership exists, that there are stronger outcomes?
Well, most of the companies in the survey who had hired, who do employ someone with the disability, have either used the services of DEED, VRS, or one of the the NGOs that are offering the same services. So it's necessary. That's illustrated in the quote I just read, and it works. It's a public-private partnership that's actually working very well. And I would say it's a real bright spot in the whole effort to improve DEI for people with disabilities. We at the end of most of our surveys, we ask an overall performance question. How are we doing as a state, as a people, in helping and supporting the needs of people with disabilities? And the scale we use, it's a 9-point scale, and the question reads, from your experiences and anything you may have read, seen, or heard, how would you rate the state of Minnesota as a whole on its efforts to enhance employment opportunities for people with disabilities? So we have a 9-point scale, right? And a 9 means excellent, a 7 is good, a 5 is fair, a 3 is subpar, and a 1 is poor. Well, the average on this scale, the average was 7.7. That's better than good. 7 is good. 63% of the respondents gave an 8 or a 9, top 2 box rating. That's the highest we've ever seen of when we do this when we use this scale. Even in private sector companies where we're measuring how well is the company doing on the journey or on their services, blah blah blah. This is a very, very high rating. And when we use this in other areas related to developmental disabilities, like education services or healthcare service, or just overall inclusion, it's nowhere near that high. The ratings are all over the scale, and the averages are usually around 6, less than good. So it's a real bright spot in the whole effort of DEI, of enhancing DEI for people with developmental disabilities.
Thank you, Tom. And I don't want to take us too far a downer road, but I do want to talk about, there's a question in the chat, and something we've talked about is really identifying barriers. And so, Eric, I'm wondering, you mentioned the unified work that MDI is kind of looking outward a little bit. And I'm wondering if you could talk about kind of what you've heard about barriers in the minds of employers that keep them from pursuing employing people with disabilities. And then Lisa, I'm going to follow up with you to give some examples from an employee perspective, kind of tackling those as you went through your journey as well.
Yeah, great question, Derek. And shout out to Luigi in Italy. Great cheese, great wine, phenomenal shopping there, but also one of the more progressive places in the world for actually supporting individuals with disabilities. So what I've seen, I think I don't want to go too far back, but businesses are formed for a reason, which is to create money, which is a lot about outwardly focused, looking at your customer, products and services. And so businesses then become very distracted around a lot of things that focus them on those two things. There are not very many businesses that are formed that are actually social enterprises that are starting for the thing that we're trying to get them to do. And so it's no fault of the business that these barriers pop up. They're just natural courses of what the business does. Then you get to kind of some of the legal things, which are, if you're a leader and you're a hiring manager, it's weird, but when you hire somebody, you're also thinking about, I don't want to have to fire this person. And when you haven't worked with the individuals and you're getting out of your comfort zone, sometimes they have tough time identifying talent that will fit the organization, and they get fearful that if they hire the wrong individual, how would I look if I hired a person with disabilities and I had to let them go? So they don't hire out of fear and not having that ability. We've seen that, and they may think about it, but ultimately they don't, but they don't say that, right? So there's a lot of hidden parts of the onion that we don't talk about. What I would say that one of the easiest ways that we've found most effective to removing barriers when we start with our unified work program and work with employers is not starting at the top, but searching for someone in the organization that has a lived experience. It's that individual that brings credibility and comfort to the organization that this is something that we can do. And they're really able to translate that into value in the organization's terms, which helps us to break down those barriers and distractions. And then we count on leaders in the organization. They got one or two choices, once again, which is, are they going to fuel the fire by blowing on it and kindling it up? Or are they going to throw a blanket on it because they're distracted and there's other things to do? So this is how the organization really plays across. And so our unified work program really creates a safe place for organizations to have that discussion. And so we can get these things out and talk about, that's okay, but here's how this might fit. And we want to create comfort zones for organizations and just say that not every individual with X disability is a fit. And we're not trying to tell organizations to hire individuals that are not fit. It's not good for the organization, not good for the individual, but we can find these phenomenal, great matches that really drive this up for a boost. The other thing I would just kind of peel off, and then I'll give it over to you to take this, is Derek put in there, what's the societal benefit? Look, people with disabilities, different economic backgrounds, Black, white, indigenous, ethnic backgrounds, they're Democrats, they're Republicans, they're independents, you name it, they fit the category. So it's one of those societal benefits or things that we can rally around. And that's one of the benefits we've seen, is that when we bring this mission to society, there's a large boost around it. And so I think it's kind of a diversity, cultural equity boost to start with this, because when you start with it, it benefits everybody else in the organization. And those individuals are changed within the organization are the same people that go back to their communities, and they're not unchanged. They're changed fundamentally as a human being, and they carry that goodwill back in society, and they're better. They hands down, I'm a better human being today than I was 3 years ago. Fact be told. And so I think there's the societal benefits from this inclusiveness as a society, because I think there's so many things that we find that divide us today. This is something that I've found that we can really rally behind.
Yeah, I might just kind of turn that over to you a little bit, kind of in your experience, what individuals with disabilities are contributing to their workplaces that maybe other people don't.
So for me, living with a disability, it's something I'm constantly learning to adapt to my surroundings. So change is a good thing, I guess, because I'm constantly going through it. As someone with non-apparent disabilities, tasks that may come easy to others may take me a little bit more time to grasp or have that reassurance that I'm doing that task right. But I'm also dedicated to ensuring that I'm completing that task in the most efficient way, and also finding any creative solutions along the way that may make that task more efficient or accessible for others, as we start to share practices throughout the company. I take a lot of pride and passion in my work, and I also believe that I bring to the table creativity, agility, especially for hands-on learning opportunities, openness, forethought, and the ability to think outside of the box. I'm also empathetic, and I feel I have a capacity for solving problems. So being open and honest about my disability has helped me create an inclusive culture for myself, but also within the work environment of the people that I work with. It's helped others become more open with me and comfortable around me and sharing stories. and helping us kind of work together to create those networks to go above and beyond even inclusivity in the workplace and bring that outside, into our local communities. Just being there as a support for one another and being open and honest is a really big key for somebody with disabilities within the workplace. It's not always easy because you have that fear of being judged, or okay, if I'm open and honest with somebody that I have a disability, am I not going to be able to go to promote myself within the company and get a different job because, oh, she has a disability, we don't want to work with her anymore, or we don't want to overtask her with this ability. It's not saying that I can't do everything. It's just my brain works a little bit different than maybe somebody else does. It may take me a little bit longer to get that task, but once I have that task down, I may be completing it how I was trained, but I'm also, my wheels in my brain are turning. How can I make this more efficient and accessible? Part of a journey that I've been on within 3M, I've been in human resources for 8.5 years, and I'm passionate about it. And I love working with people, and I love helping others develop within their career. So one of the things I didn't have at the time when I first started was a bachelor's degree. So I took my, what do I need to get this done? I took that initiative. I spoke with my superiors. I spoke with people outside of my superiors, just to find the different steps that I needed to take to complete to get that done at my pace. So I am proud to say that I completed my bachelor's degree at the beginning of this year and received a promotion within 3M in August of this year. So it's just finding that courage, feeling comfortable in an environment and feeling inclusive. Just you're not going to get that unless you can open up. And so I encourage everybody, open up, because if you open up and you are excluded by your employer or your coworkers, you're not in the right place. There are companies out there that just, they are very inclusive. So if you open up and you're not welcome, there's other jobs. Just contact me. I'll help you find it. I love mentoring people. It's stepping outside of my comfort zone by helping others to deal with their disability or come out, or how to approach their managers and things like that, and share their stories too. So I everywhere from mentoring like college students or even people that were higher up than I was, has really helped me build my network too, and helped me raise that awareness too.
Well, congratulations, Tia, and I hope you can see in the chat you're getting a lot of kudos. So thank you for sharing your experience, and congratulations. I want to go back, and there was a question also in the chat. Lisa, just thinking about kind of the compounding barriers that individuals with disabilities face to employment, from transportation, lack of job coaches, et cetera. There was, I think, a question specifically about Social Security benefits or other public benefits that interact as an individual may be seeking employment. And I'm hoping you can just share kind of the Olmsted County experience. And I found it very interesting, you're a public employer. And so just talking about some of the journey that you went on and helping and thinking about what it would be like for an individual with disabilities to be employed at Olmsted.
Sure. Let's see. Well, I'll do the personal piece first, and then I'll talk about the actual hiring experience that we went through. I'm on a very small team in administration, but of course I also carry with me my son. Every day he's there. I'm thinking about him, and I think Tom really talked about it best. I learned early on that what mattered to me most for him was his quality of life. When he was a teenager, we started hearing more from teachers and professionals that, there would be this real chance that he might have to rely on Social Security and public assistance. And so that maybe we should start tailoring our life at home a little bit more to that idea. So maybe not eating out as much, maybe not traveling as much with him, because it was seen that these would be things he maybe couldn't afford to do if he were fortunate enough as an adult to get into a group home and really had to survive based on that limited Social Security check and like medical assistance. So for me, early on, I started to realize that that could absolutely impact his quality of life, not the money portion, but if there were other barriers that were in place to employment, for example, right? How much could he work? What if he could work and wanted to work full time, and suddenly there was this gray area, right? If he wasn't earning enough, would he lose that safety net and those benefits? And would it keep him from taking a full-time position and really doing what he wanted to do? So there were those thoughts that we had early on about, well, how does he still have quality of life? How will he have enough money, potentially, if we weren't here, if something happened tomorrow, to get his hair cut, because we were learning that he'd have very little income if he had to rely solely on safety nets. And we knew that he likes to, spend time with his friends. He's gone 3 nights a week doing things with his friends. Not always things I'd pick for him, but he's 25, so he does what he's going to do, right? But that, to have all of those opportunities, to be able to afford to pay for transportation because he's not a driver, like how was all of that going to look, and how were those barriers going to be navigated? Now, what I still find frustrating is that we have, federal programs that still don't have a lot of gray area, right? It's still kind of $10 more, and so that is something that has to be changed. However, what I will also say in a hopeful spirit is that as individuals and as folks who are hiring and thinking about creating diverse teams that have folks with developmental disabilities on them, we can also change that trajectory one individual at a time. So I will give you this before I get into the barriers within our hiring piece at work. Like I said, my son is 25. He's worked full-time, earning a living wage and full benefits for Mayo Clinic for 3 years. He is completely financially independent. He's doing his thing. Again, not always the thing I would pick, but he is choosing what he does. And that, the happiness and the pride and the purpose that all of that brings to him is not missed by me on any day. And then the effect, as Tom shared, that it has on his colleagues. I have met a ton of his colleagues. He spends time with his friends who also have developmental disabilities, but he also spends a lot of time with his friends at work who do not. And so their experiences and how they've received him has been just incredible, and how that has kind of changed Mayo Clinic's journey also, which is part of what inspired me. So when I was hiring and I was thinking about barriers, there were so many things, right? I mean, I sat down with HR and we had a lot of conversations because I didn't quite know how I was going to be certain that we were actually even getting folks with disabilities applying for our positions. So we had to look at a lot of things. We were requiring a driver's license where we didn't need one, right? We needed someone to be able to get to work. That didn't need a driver's license for me. So we had to start removing things and really looking at how we were posting our positions. I didn't need someone, formal education's great, but I wasn't looking for somebody with a master's degree. I wanted someone who had the right attitude, who wanted to serve, who cared about people, and who we could train and develop. That's what I was really looking for, which, if you think about it, is no different than anybody you hire, right? We're always looking to grow and develop. Once I stop doing that, I have to move into a new role, right? I mean, that's important for everybody. So rather than thinking about, oh, could these folks take cleaning positions with facilities? I heard that many times, and I was like, I'm just going to tell you right now, if you hired my son to do that, you would be throwing your money away and he'd be miserable. It'd be a horrible fit, right? But there's a lot of other things that he and other people can do, all sorts of strengths, right, that can be utilized. But we have to start thinking about this differently. And so one of the other barriers I learned about right away was, we give all of these like points, if you will, for formal education, but we don't give points necessarily for folks with developmental disabilities who have chosen to continue their education in ways that are appropriate for them. So like locally here in Rochester, we have the Rochester Academy for Independent Living, which is for folks who are 18 to 22, right? That's a choice as to whether you continue through that. And you are learning some really amazing job skills and kind of getting some professional development that honestly we all need. We shouldn't assume we have it because we don't have an obvious disability. So why don't we give points for that? Also locally, we have Project Search, which is again for folks in a certain age range who have developmental disabilities. And it is hard. It's hard to get into, and it's also super hard to complete. It's a full year of all day work at Mayo Clinic. Like you have classroom, you go through HIPAA for 2 full months. I mean, they put the fear of God into you. You're not going to tell anybody anything. And then you also have these work experiences where you have multiple rotations, where you learn about different things that you're interested in. And so that was another conversation. We need to be giving points here because while somebody maybe didn't go to a university, they maybe chose to do these other things, and those matter too, right? But the biggest thing for me was, how do we even know if folks are applying? Like, do people see this as something attainable to them? And so I wasn't totally sure how to get a target group. So I kind of went, I mean, I didn't cheat, but I went the easy way maybe. We have, developmental disability social workers, a lot of them in the agency. And so I asked folks to really think about their clients and to reach out to them and encourage them to apply when I was hiring. I had some interesting responses. Some folks were like, are you sure? Do you know what you're doing? Is this going to work? Well, I don't know what I'm doing completely, but I'm going to try it. And, if I'll learn something from this. But I said, but it was also kind of interesting that I got that response from some other professionals, because I didn't expect that necessarily. There were also professionals who advised some of their folks maybe not to apply because of that Social Security medical assistance, public assistance issue, although we were hiring for 30 hours a week. So that did come with full benefits at that point. And it was a living wage. It was the same wage anybody would get coming in. And so we got a really amazing group of applicants, and we interviewed 8 people. There were 3 who disclosed disabilities in the interview. We offered job coaches for the interviews. We said if you're a guardian, you can have whoever you want present with you. We offered virtual and in-person interviews because of the travel piece. We also gave application questions out to everyone with the same amount of time to review those in advance, and told folks, like, you can take your time. It's really fine for us to repeat questions. We're happy to come back to things if you want to later. And we had a really amazing interview process. I included the associate director for HR. She was blown away. And at the end, it was a unanimous decision. I actually left the decision to the hiring team. I don't always do that, but I did because I knew who a couple of the people were from our small community, and they hadn't realized yet I was Chaz's mom, so that was good. That felt better. But they unanimously picked someone. She's been working for us for 3 years. She's amazing. We were just on a panel together yesterday in person, and I will share with you that she's been, she moved to full-time quickly. She's been promoted. And one of the things that I have to help people get past, this is another barrier in how we think. We didn't create a job for her, and we didn't give her a job. She earned the job. She was already qualified for it. She earned it. She has all the commitment and dedication in the world. And even though, to what Tia said, even though some parts of the job might have taken longer to learn than others, the dedication was there. The motivation was there. The commitment to serving others was there. So it wasn't an issue of if she could learn, it was how and when, right? And that was great because we've watched her progress, get promoted, and now she even is one of the co-leads for our employee resource group with diverse abilities. I mean, she's not going to stay with us. She's going to keep going, right? Her trajectory it's whatever she wants it to be. And I just feel so fortunate every day to get to have her there. She brings perspective others don't have. And she's so open and honest like you, Tia. So I'm always grateful when folks are just brave and willing to to take that risk, because it does change everybody else around them. And I did share with her yesterday, because we were talking about parents and, you know, how that can be. And she, you know, and parents sometimes are a little bit fearful and controlling because, you know, they're scared. And we talked about the fact that, you know, I understand that about her parents, but that's also a reason I couldn't work directly with my own son, besides nepotism, right? Like I couldn't do that because some of my mindset personally would get in the way. And I don't want to get in the way of what he's able to do and how far he's able to go. And that's what I want for her too. Like, let's keep moving her to wherever she wants to be.
Lisa, thank you so much. I feel like as you were talking, I was trying to like rapidly write a blueprint because I think just some incredible lessons that you shared. So we only have a few minutes. We are going to share contact information for each of the panelists so we can keep this conversation going. Eric shared a great resource for unified work in the chat. In the chat, there's also a link to the Governor's Council as well. I'm going to ask the panelists kind of for your reaction for today's panel, both a reflection and a looking forward. And I'm going to ask you to use 3 adjectives of reflection and looking forward. So I've stalled for now 25 seconds, and we are going to start with Tom. I should have prepped you for this. Sorry.
Yeah. I think the bottom line is that for the state and for all of us, this is a good investment. Okay, there's an adjective, good, right? It's a good investment to support diversity, inclusion, equity for people with disabilities, for so many reasons that my fellow panelists have so eloquently described. But yeah, it's working. It's a good investment. DEI is a good thing, and it does benefit us all. It's a win-win.
Thank
It's
you.
a big win-win. There's another adjective.
Big win-win. Thank you. Tia.
For me, enthusiastic, right? I feel really empowered that, you know, there's so many people on that same mission. Let's just keep moving forward, Minnesota, and, you know, and let that kind of ripple effect throughout the US. That'd be even better. Confident that we do have the knowledge and capability within the state of Minnesota to create that ripple. I know it's just so much passion on seeing the questions come through and people being engaged and really wanting to learn more. Just makes all that extra effort that we do, whether it's in our diverse groups or, you know, like for me within disability in Minnesota, just makes all that extra work that I'm putting in worth that effort too. So it's just a great opportunity, and I thank you guys for having me today.
Thank you so much. Lisa, 3 adjectives.
Okay, I'm going to go with optimistic, grateful, and connected. There's 3, I think. And yeah, I just want to thank you for inviting me to be here. I forget sometimes how much I need to be with like-minded people who are on a similar journey. And it's so refreshing to get to hear from all of you today, because I've taken like 1 or 1.5 steps, but that's not it, right? That's not the end. It's always how to keep sharing and discussing and hiring more people and getting folks to think about some of this differently. So thank you to all of you. I needed this today. I didn't even realize it.
Thank you. And finally, Eric.
Maybe many pages of notes. So sorry, that's my funny one. So remarkable. So I think individuals with disabilities are remarkable people. They're great resources because they spend life doing, you know, problem solving in a world that's not necessarily built for them. And then limited because they're only limited by others. They're not limited by themselves. They're limited by others. So those would be my 3.
Awesome. Thank you. We are 1 minute over, but appreciate everyone's time today. Please keep the conversation going. We will be following up this webinar for all attendees with the resources that were shared, contact information for the panelists as well. So thank you for your time and have a great rest of your week.